Good day, and welcome to our webinar on inventory management, executive challenges, and best practices. Today's webinar is brought to you by CFE Media and sponsored by Oracle NetSuite. We'll be joined by Michelle Davidson, Industry Principal, Strategic Initiatives with Oracle NetSuite. I'm Kevin Parker, an editor with CFE Media and Technology. As small to mid-sized manufacturers and distributors grow, inventory management capabilities often don't keep up. These companies struggle with an increasing number of SKUs. They find themselves in understocked or overstocked positions, and they lack the metrics needed to optimize inventory. Ultimately, what they need is real-time visibility across the supply chain. Stay tuned to learn the results of a survey of executives and managers at manufacturing and distribution enterprises about what inventory challenges and issues they face day to day and best practices they are embracing to keep pace with the needs of complex supply chains. Learning objectives for the presentation following include: understand issues and challenges related to inventory management, discern what the opportunities are for improved inventory management, review inventory management best practices based on today's technology advances, and realize how supply chains are evolving in an age of omni-channel commerce. To get the best results from the webcast platform, please make note of the following as you participate in today's event. If you are having technical problems, click on the question mark at the top right-hand corner of the screen to bring up a list of system checks to make before escalating to an online technician. If you experience issues with the slides or audio, please refresh the browser or click the Refresh Media button directly under the presenter's headshot. You can control volume settings by adjusting either your computer's volume or that of the platform. If a technician is needed, type a message into the Ask a Question box, and someone will get to you as soon as possible. Answers to technical questions will be in the Answered Questions box on the left-hand side of the screen. The Ask a Question box is also used to ask the speakers questions. Ask questions at any time during the presentation. We'll get to as many as time allows. To download the presentation slides, use the Event Resources area on the left-hand side of the screen. This webcast is being recorded, including the Q&A session. A certificate of completion is available for each participant to download at the webinar's completion. We'll post the archive on our websites in the next several days and send you an email with a link to the archive once it's there. Let's begin with a brief video from Oracle NetSuite addressing issues relevant to today's webcast. For anyone not familiar with Oracle NetSuite, it was founded in 1998 as the first cloud ERP company. 20 years later, its offices are found in 15 countries with more than 7,000 employees and 16,000 customers, and with more than 3,000 new customers in the last year. Please launch the video.
If you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. I learned this the hard way with my first company, so I created NetSuite, the world's #1 cloud business system. NetSuite gives you the visibility and control you need to make smart decisions and grow with confidence. That's why companies who use NetSuite grow 3 times faster than the S&P 500.
Schedule your free product tour right now at netsuite.com/grow.
Welcome back. We'll begin our program by reviewing results of the survey of inventory management professionals like yourself about their assessment of the inventory management function in their manufacturing or distribution enterprise. We'll be joined by Michelle Davidson, who will provide comment on the survey results, as well as outline how Oracle NetSuite's functional footprint and technologies match up with your expectations. Michelle Davidson has lived in the world of wholesale distribution and manufacturing for more than 15 years. She began her career in the printing and promotional products industry. While managing accounts and overseeing project operations, Michelle gained experience with warehouse management, manufacturing, and distribution. She also supported the design of custom software solutions answering organizational and customer needs. Later, Michelle transitioned to the world of ERP software in capacities including account management, channel sales, direct sales, and solution consulting and engineering. Her focus was on complex manufacturing and distribution needs for industries that included food and beverage, pharmaceutical, industrial machinery and equipment, electronics, automotive, and others. Over the years, Michelle has walked industrial and warehouse facilities across wholesale distribution and manufacturing verticals and gained experience solving organizational business challenges. Michelle, welcome to today's webinar.
Thank you so much. Look forward to helping everyone.
The survey results indicate respondents have something that borders on affection for their solutions and systems for inventory management, combined with a healthy recognition that they are not taking full advantage of everything the current technology landscape has to offer. Michelle, before we dig into the details of the survey results, what were some of your takeaways?
It's pretty standard on some of the results that you got from the survey of typical questions we get from an ERP standpoint. And I speak in acronyms. ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning, so software that helps you run your business. So I look forward to you guys talking about some of the discoveries you found and then the solutions that NetSuite will provide to customers who are trying to figure out how do we answer some of these inventory management issues.
Thanks, Michelle. Let's start. As you can see, regarding location, the results mirror our common knowledge of the U.S. manufacturing heartland and its regional strengths. Respondents said they are involved in their company's collaborative production, planning, and scheduling process. Respondents said they occupy job functions that range from process production or manufacturing engineering, 25%, to operations, 23%, corporate management, 16%, and plant management, 12%. Other respondents were involved in product, sales, supply chain, and materials management. Focusing on small to mid-size enterprises with revenues of $50 million and under, the percentage of corporate managers taking the survey rose to 29%. Respondents were from across the range of U.S. manufacturing industries, including those most important to the U.S. economic well-being. For company revenues, please note the following. More than half the respondents were from companies whose total revenues were less than $50 million, while an additional 13% had revenues between $50 million and $200 million. 20% of the respondents had revenues between $200 million and $500 million. 23% had revenues of more than $500 million. However, if we restrict results to companies with revenues less than $50 million, then 58% had revenues of less than $10 million, and 43% had revenues between $10 and $50 million. In other words, what we have here is a profile of small to medium manufacturers and their attitudes towards inventory management. Respondents were asked, do you feel your company's current inventory management practices and systems satisfactorily meet your company's needs in terms of flexibility, functionality, and scalability? Almost half of the respondents, 49%, say they are only somewhat satisfied with their inventory management solutions, as well as an additional 17% saying they are dissatisfied. What's important here is that these are growing companies, so scalability, the ability of the system to expand as the system grows, is key. When asked what the challenges are that led to this qualified endorsement of their solutions, 53% point to complex paperwork and processes. 54% say scaling of systems and processes was either definitely or somewhat of a problem. 55% say communicating with customers in an automated, streamlined fashion was definitely or somewhat of a challenge. Finally, 57% said communicating with supply chain partners was somewhat or definitely a challenge. The respondents were asked, which of the following issues is your company forced to deal with? Check all that apply. More than 30% of respondents say they struggle with continually finding itself in either overstocked or understocked positions, dealing with inventory counts that don't align with what's really on the storeroom and warehouse shelves, and constantly having to change physical counts to reflect actual in-stock positions. At the same time, more than 20% of respondents say they struggle with high levels of human error, no metrics to leverage so as to confidently optimize inventory, too much obsolete inventory in the warehouse or distribution center, and poor demand forecasting. In addition, more than 14% say they struggle using Microsoft Excel spreadsheets to manage inventory. We all know what a great tool Excel spreadsheets are, both in the enterprise and on the plant floor, but it's also clear what the limitations are in terms of using as a tool for communications or combating complexity. Respondents were asked, for each stock-keeping unit supported by your company's current inventory management and supply chain solutions, which of the following data or data points are available to take into consideration? I won't read the entire slide to you, but for each stock-keeping unit supported by a company's current inventory management and supply chain solutions, the top data or data points available to take into consideration are stock on order, 48%, required production lead times, 37%, and multi-location tracking, 34%. It certainly seems that these companies are lacking some important data. Michelle, let me turn to you and ask, given the list above, which could prove most useful to a growing company?
Sure. Depending on the industry that a lot of your customers might be in or people listening to the call today, obviously those top three are definitely areas that are always topics that I end up talking to our customers about. But I also have a tendency to lean towards lot traceability, serial tracking, and think for those customers who have more stringent rules that they need to adhere to. Those kinds of functions are pretty key, not only from a growing company, but even from a startup. Think about food and beverage, pharmaceuticals, nutraceuticals, even things like cannabis that are starting to grow. There's several areas that you need that traceability. That spider veins into other areas like bin tracking, just because when we start talking about traceability across those areas, we get into more granular discussions of when, where, and how these items are coming in. That also bleeds into accurate sales forecasting because a lot of those products will have shelf life dates or certain, again, stringent rules that we need to adhere to.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. On the next slide, respondents were asked, which of the following capabilities does your inventory management system provide? As you'll note on the slide, only 35% of respondents' current inventory management systems provide analyzed inventory trends and automatically manage inventory. Only 30% are equipped with multi-location planning and the ability to trace assembly lot items or component lot items up to the supplier or customer. Michelle, I'll turn to you again to give us some deeper analysis as to these results.
Absolutely. A lot of times customers who have more small to startup businesses will be working off of systems like a QuickBooks or something like that, where it's a great place to start, but very quickly you find the parameters of the software itself because they don't answer a lot of these questions like NetSuite would out of the box. So when we talk about inventory trends, truly it's looking at how do my items move? How often should we order them? When we deal with multi-location planning, our warehouse in the east might be fast moving compared to what we have in Texas or the West Coast. So each area is going to have its own trends, and how do you have a system that sits on top of that? Furthermore, it's really always about how do we reduce the costs, right? If you have items that have shelf life, then we need to make sure we're ordering the right amount of inventory at the right time. versus, let's say, their standard just wholesale distribution products. The more inventory you have sitting on your shop floor is just basically the rental space you're paying for the size of the warehouse you have. So it's, again, managing all of those moving parts to make sure that you have a system that can give you that visibility across the board. And I would say most of these trends are a reflection of probably the size of companies that were surveyed, as well as the more simpler systems they might have in place. And I don't mean that to be offensive. I just mean that to be everyone's got to start somewhere. And typically most people recognize to start with like a QuickBooks or something else that's smaller, and then typically have to go through that growth spurt of moving into a more robust system like NetSuite. The beauty of our NetSuite system, though, is that we scale with you, so you don't have to go through that transition, which can oftentimes be pretty painful.
Thanks, Michelle. On the next slide, respondents were asked, as information and operations technologies increasingly automate supply chain management, which of the following technology trends are of most interest to your company? Respondents said that they are already using or beginning to implement the following emergent technologies: analytics and machine learning, 28%, blockchain or distributed ledger, 19%, cloud software as a service, 45%, and forward deployed inventory, 24%. Finally, industrial Internet of Things, 29%. It's clear that cloud is having a huge impact on enterprise software markets. In fact, the percentages above would be higher if those researching these topics were included in the summary. Michelle, why has cloud proved to be so important for users of ERP, inventory management, and other type enterprise systems?
Absolutely. In today's day and age, technology is something that we all rely on. Think about how we use our cell phones, not only to manage our day-to-day business, but even our personal lives, whether it's ordering off of Amazon and online shopping, or even managing things like your security systems from your phone. So knowing and having that visibility and technology in your hands has oftentimes bled into things like how you run your business, because on-premise solutions really tie you down where you don't have the ability to necessarily go on vacation or do a ton of work trips per se without actual people behind the scenes to manage the servers that are on-premise. With software as a service or cloud software, it really allows you to have flexibility and run your business from the beach of Fiji, is what I like to say as a visual. But you have real-time information at your fingertips, knowing what's going on, not only from an ownership standpoint, but also across your executive management team and into the people who are actually doing the work, with specific security systems in place to make sure that there's checks and balances. So if I'm the accountant, I can only see certain information that I'm privy to versus the CEO who can see everything, or the controller, for example. It's those kinds of features and, again, the ease of use that we expect in our everyday lives that are really starting to dictate how we run our businesses.
Thanks, Michelle. Respondents were asked, what aspects of the industrial Internet of Things is your company most invested in? Check all that apply. As you can see from the results, they were sensor technology and connectivity, 43%, edge devices for real-time control and management, 31%, and analytics for heightened insight into opportunities and challenges, 36%. Turning to the next slide, company goals for digital supply chains. Readers were asked, the respondents were asked, as development of digital supply chains allows pervasive capture and exchange of structured and unstructured data, which of the following goals are most important for your company? And they were asked to order them from 1 to 4, with 1 meaning most important. Number 1, as you can see, was real-time visibility. Number 2 was process optimization. Number 3 was predictive maintenance. And 4, proactive replenishment. Michelle, some of these topics are outside of the scope of our webinar, but which of these goals do you find to be top of mind for manufacturers you work with?
Typically, real-time visibility is a number 1 leading topic that we face oftentimes when people are looking to replace their systems or have a central platform for their how they run their business. I would also say it's really about optimization. Visibility and process optimization go hand in hand, just because typically at that time, not only are you trying to see what's happening in real time, but you're trying to figure out what the bottlenecks are, what are areas of improvements to save you money, whether that's in people, whether that's in inventory itself, and or the processes you have. All of that leads to money at the end of the day. So how do you run lean while also making sure that you don't have to have 20 people to run some simple processes, i.e. on a spreadsheet of some kind?
Thanks, Michelle. That completes the summary of the survey results. With that said, Michelle, please go ahead.
Perfect. So the survey was super interesting because it hits a lot of the points that a lot of customers come and talk to us at NetSuite about replacing their inventory management solutions. And much like Kevin mentioned earlier, some of these topics might not be completely in scope with our webinar today, but it all spider veins, as I call it, into how you run your actual business. So typical inventory issues and trends that customers will talk to me about. And by the way, when I say customers, those could be potential new customers as well as existing customers. We try to make sure to focus on both sides, because when you're trying to replace your ERP system, typically you're going through and hitting the major points of why you actually needed to replace your system in the first place. Once you have a system like NetSuite, it's really about refining it and getting into the deeper levels of areas that you couldn't get into before. So conversations I typically have are anywhere between, having the right amount of inventory at the right time. Think, for example, if you source items from overseas, especially with some of the issues we're seeing overseas currently, that can impact when or what timing you have your actual inventory in hand. And if you have anything on back order, that obviously then costs you customers, because in this day and age, if they can't get it right away, they'll find it through other avenues or channels like Amazon or fill in the blank. Knowing where your inventory is, not only in your warehouse, but as it's coming over from the different locations, whether it's domestically or internationally. How you source your goods. What are the top suppliers that you have, and how can we actually manage those relationships or have backup plans to the main suppliers you have? Shipments and timing, that's not only from an inbound status of what you have coming into your warehouse, but also what you have outgoing to your customers. And things and topics like demand planning, where we want to make sure that we're ordering the right items based on the actual demand that we have, alongside managing that with safety stocks, lead times, reorder points, and really that kind of all gets tied into what we call supply chain management. But I always find it interesting when people will just leave it as a broad topic of supply chain management, because it, again, spider veins into several different areas, including things like your inventory counts, and I would say more robust features that a lot of people are typically looking for, like supplier scorecards, reporting, right? A lot of people will do their inventory management on Excel spreadsheets, but then that limits you on having full visibility. What happens if there's user error when people are entering information? So it's really having a centralized system that gives you real-time reporting and capabilities that will automate your processes for you, so there's less room for human error. I've mentioned a few times, obviously, I represent NetSuite, where we actually offer not only inventory management, but we get into a bit more details to address your full business needs. First and foremost, our philosophy is that we're born in the cloud and designed to address an entire business. NetSuite is cloud first and cloud only, meaning it has all of the tenants you would associate with a real cloud solution. Access using any device, anytime, anywhere. It's consumer-oriented and easy for anyone to pick up and use without extensive training. We try to make sure that we're built to run a business. Most other cloud products out there were only built for specific sections. For example, they started off built to run something else like HR departments or finance departments or a shop floor or a sales team, meaning that when other capabilities were added, they seemed to act like a bolt-on. NetSuite knew from day one every function within a company needed a solution as though it was designed for them. That's why it has all the key business functions represented equally: finance, sales, support, service, people. I've been using the word spider vein several times, but it's the same kind of concept of knowing we start from one place, but as you really start looking at your entire business, it bleeds into other areas that are key to most people, especially to small to mid-sized companies. You're typically running lean, you're typically wearing multiple hats, and how do we make sure that we use all the people that we have and the resources we have to make sure that it's all unified and we're all working off the same information. That's why we're built on a single data source. Our unified data model is the key to being able to enable BI in the way companies need it today. Our unified data model allows you to report and analyze your entire business end to end. It's all real time with no need to build complex data warehouses with multiple moving parts that many other products require, as they have multiple products on multiple platforms. NetSuite security by functional area, fields, companies, subsidiaries, and sites, all of these different features make it easier for you to do what you do best, which is focus on your business. Our platform also provides personalization, customization, and development, which I think is a little ahead for a lot of the customers that have been surveyed for this particular presentation at this time. But it's really just to talk about the fact that you have the ability to grow into the software that's available for you. And last but not least, it's built for your industry. So we make sure that NetSuite has what's needed across software services, advertising, media, and publishing, nonprofit, manufacturing, wholesale distribution, and retail, to name a few. My job specifically focuses on any customers that have product-based companies. So it's really focusing on the core of it, which is inventory management, and then bleeds over into how they manufacture it, maybe how they have distribution channels, down to what are the different store levels if it's retail, for example. So you've got a lot of moving parts with all of that. But again, you need a centralized core system to help you make sure that you're making the right choices at the right time. What we do to make sure that you don't have to go through that change of, hey, we're a startup company, we can only afford so much software, we only need so much software. What we try to provide from a NetSuite standpoint is to give you a blueprint for growth, meaning as we've worked toward our mission to deliver one system in the cloud to help businesses grow, we've learned that every business has three key areas to grow beyond, which is visibility, control, and agility. Visibility means being able to see how your business has performed historically, how it is operating now, and being able to spot trends that could lead to opportunities for more efficiency and for growth. The greatest threat to growth is a loss of control. With control, you can grow the right way. Agility is about capitalizing on opportunities by reacting quickly when they present themselves. Control is great. It helps you when you know your path to growth. But what if that route changes? Agility can keep you from going off the road. So again, we think about a lot of those features and functions for you out of the box. You can start with smaller pieces, and as you grow into it, the system will give you that flexibility, whether it's through workflows, whether it's through best practices, and this is how most customers in your industry use the software. We take a more hands-on approach with it, again, because we know software. You know your business, and marrying those two areas together really allows you for success, which is what we really strive for. As far as inventory management is concerned, because I know I'm talking a bit about what NetSuite does overall, but specific to inventory management, we have out-of-the-box functionality that allows you to look at inventory profitability, how you reorder specific items, true inventory visibility, and what we call is 365 visibility. So most people, when they're coming off of systems, whether it's Excel spreadsheets or QuickBooks, for example, you have a very limited scope. Think of it as looking at a microscope, and what's on that lens is all you can see. With NetSuite, we understand some of those issues, so not only do we make sure to have automation out of the box, but we also have standard reporting that guides through with it as well, including functions like vendor performance and things that oftentimes customers might have thought, gosh, we need to pay more money for, or that's something that we'll get to when we get into a bigger software. At the end of the day, regardless of what size your company is, there are basic rights or basic needs that a customer will have that we try to answer with, again, our out-of-the-box functionality. For example, when it comes to your demand and supply planning, these are really big words to basically just talk about what is the type of demand that you have and how do you get your inventory in hand to answer that. Whether you're working through 3PLs or other distributors or a manufacturer that happens to be overseas, All of those different functions offer different timing, offer a lot of management that can, again, be done on Excel spreadsheets, but heaven forbid that person who manages that Excel spreadsheet goes on vacation or is out sick. You lose an amount of visibility that if you had a system like NetSuite in place, everyone can know what's happening at the right time, while also putting checks and balances in place to make sure that if I'm not allowed to have that kind of access to information, then I wouldn't based on the security systems in the software. So you'll notice, for example, on this slide, not only do I talk about demand and supply planning and how that looks and flows through our software, but we also offer role-based systems to make sure that those checks and balances are there for you out of the box. When it comes to inventory planning, demand and supply planning is a piece of that, but then it's actually looking into, all right, which items are actually performing well for us. Maybe it's time where you actually design a new product, but you have no historical demand yet for this new product. So you might need to base that off of something that we've had existing in the past. So again, those kinds of 360 visibility into how you actually calculate that demand and your historical sales, how you then calculate what our supply plan is. And being that we're in the month of February, a lot of people are going through their fiscal year planning and trying to figure out, okay, what are budgets? How do we make sure that we stay within those budgets and adhere to what we have going on outside of what we're doing with our inventory, because sales might have a different plan. Marketing has a different plan. So how do we bring all that together to make sure that we get the best price possible from the vendors that we can trust the most? So again, it's all of those moving pieces that we pull together within our module called inventory management. And then, of course, in the inventory purchasing side, it's figuring out what is the best price, what agreements do we have in place. Oftentimes, I've seen customers managing it through Excel spreadsheets. I've seen things like sticky notes on boards, and heaven forbid the wind blows and a piece of one of those Post-its falls off. So again, I've seen it from everywhere, from people managing it on complex spreadsheets, homegrown systems, to piece of paper and pen that, again, if they're gone on vacation, if they get sick, if anything happens, of course, then we're missing some of that information because it lives in someone's head. So again, centralizing it in one place, in one system, allows you that visibility and agility. And the best way I can describe that is, if you have any questions or if you want to see how this works more so, please reach out, as we can always set up a demonstration for you. Or we can also send you some guided videos of how we handle that that inventory management. But out of the box with our module itself, it comes with standard dashboards, reminders, KPIs, and reports that are specific to the actual vertical that you sit in. So if you're food and beverage, for example, you're going to deal with a lot more shelf life issues, traceability issues, where did this come from, dates, those kinds of details. If you're dealing with more machinery and equipment, who's the manufacturer, where did it come from? Again, a lot of those standard reports that you would expect out of the box are listed here for you to see. And then what we also do is we recognize that we can't always answer every requirement that you might have. So customizing those reports are very simple and user-friendly. And when I say customizing, I don't mean getting into the software and programming it yourself, but rather getting into the software and adding columns, adding fields with a simple drag and drop. It's not actual programming. It's just user-friendly fields that you can adjust your reports on, much like if you're sitting in your Outlook, for example, and you want to have a reading pane versus a list view. Those kinds of functions and features are what we have out of the box, including your standard KPIs to make sure that you know, hey, what are the aging of my inventory? Why are certain items moving, not moving? Again, a lot of these reports are things that people would spend hours on that we just provide with a couple clicks of a button, maybe even just one click depending on where you're at in the software. Now, you might be asking, as I've been really talking about what NetSuite does on an inventory management level, I have mentioned also what we do for whole businesses in general. Just note that you can use a system like NetSuite at any time, whether you're a startup company with 2 people in your firm up to a multi-million-dollar business. We cover all of that, all of those kinds of customers, and make sure to scale our software accordingly while giving you best practices, because we understand and we were built and bred for businesses like you to use our software, right? Everybody needs some kind of system to start up. And typically, if you're looking to maybe start up your company and sell it at some point, again, systems like NetSuite are going to make it a lot sweeter of a deal for someone looking to buy your company, just because, again, you've got the reports visibility and flexibility out of the box already that they're looking for. If you're trying to transition off of disparate systems, meaning you've got an accounting solution in one spot, an inventory management system in another, Excel spreadsheets, and then stuff that's sitting on people's computers, it's a definite time where you should be raising some red flags on the fact that you probably can't grow as much as you want to because of some of those handcuffs you have with the systems in place. So anytime you're running into that, make sure to reach out to someone like NetSuite. Again, we have a scalable product, so it's not like you're buying the same solution if you're a multi-billion-dollar customer versus someone who's a startup company. We understand the different requirements and needs, and you've got to grow into it. So we, again, package our software accordingly. If you're looking and using homegrown systems and it's something you've been using for 20 years, but the developer who wrote it with you is retiring or fill in the blank, a lot of those conversations are something I've also had. Again, that's just as a good starting point to really looking at an ERP system that is cloud-based. Because what you've done is spent a lot of time guiding them on how to write your software when there's already software solutions out there ready to do what you need, and then we recognize that if you want to customize or tailor it, there are some functions and features out of the box available to you so that you can take advantage of customizing it without having to start from scratch. Just think of it as the 80-20 rule. 80% of what standard businesses needs are what you're going to find in the box, out of the box with NetSuite. That last 20% is where you can run with scissors and figure out, hey, what do we need to customize this? Maybe we run our business in a unique way for you fill in the blank, but how do you have a system that allows you that flexibility? And then, of course, if you have no central point of reference, you've got disparate systems, maybe your current ERP is just not working for you, or you find that it's hard to work with the software developer or the partner that you're working with, the whole answer to all of this is you can use NetSuite at any time. That being said, I think I'm going to pass this back to you, Kevin, and take a look at any questions that might be here in the chat.
Well, thanks, Michelle. That's exactly what we're going to do next. I think it's very interesting to contrast the capabilities that manufacturers, small to mid-sized manufacturers, are looking for as revealed in our survey results, and those you named off as being integral to the Oracle NetSuite system. Let's turn to the Q&A portion of the webinar, and for our audience, if you haven't yet sent us your questions, please do so now. Michelle, one thing that's always been interesting to me is it doesn't make any difference what kind of technology you're talking about, what kind of software you're talking about, enterprise systems especially. There's always such a contrast between the small to mid-sized companies and what's suitable for them to be using and what the very largest companies use. What, in your mind, are some of the essential differences between what the large corporations have on hand and what we're looking at as a suitable suite of capabilities for small to mid-size?
As I mentioned before, the basic needs are always the same throughout. As you get into larger organizations, you start talking more about automation and streamlining processes, making sure that you have visibility, checks and balances, and the ability to match specific workflows that they might have from a corporate standpoint. Think if I'm more on a startup company, we have pretty A to B to C. It's pretty quick moving. We have people who are wearing multiple hats. Whereas when you start getting into the multi-million, multi-billion-dollar size organizations, you've got different departments that you're running into, multiple layers of checks and balances to make sure that no one's running rogue. So again, it's that automation that you need in place and managing those checks and balances that just make it, I would say, slightly more complex. But again, the same requirements and standard information is still needed. Where is our inventory? Where did we get it from? Where is it at now? And why is this customer having a problem? Oftentimes, customers will also need to grow into it, right? You've got multiple people wearing multiple hats. When you start segregating a lot of the duties, that starts getting into a bit more complexities of control and regulation on what people can see and how they can see it. Does that answer the question?
I'm sure it does. Thank you so much. One of our listeners asks if we run into obsolescence, I guess in terms of inventory, how can I get rid of inventory? Can we still gain revenue? I'm not sure. Is that clear to you what they're asking?
Sure. It happens all the time with some of our customers, right? Think when you're on the retail side, there are specific trends for clothes and shoes, and then at some point something changes very quickly, and you no longer can move those items. So it's having a plan B in place. Even think for food and beverage type customers, we have these goods that might expire shortly. So what are our backup plans to that? A system like NetSuite can help you plan for that accordingly, whether it's running promotions or discounts against specific items, selling it to different vendors at a lower price to move your product and not necessarily have to scrap them completely. Those are all things where, again, a system like NetSuite will give you that flexibility and the ability to plan for plan B, C, and D. Plan A is to always move your items and sell out. Let's all be real, though. We know that doesn't always happen. So then that's plan B, C, and D.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Another question. You've been, as it was noted in your bio, you've been working for more than 15 years in this space. And I'm just wondering how your role has changed or what companies are looking for from you, or conversely, how you see ERP systems evolving over that period of time.
Sure. I started my career working with on-premise solutions and very quickly recognized that technology was really taking over. So at the time, I still worked for an on-prem solution. And on-premise means it's on your actual servers. It's software that you got as a CD or that you downloaded that goes onto your physical servers and someone manages it from an IT standpoint. Whether you have an IT guy or you actually have the owner of the company or someone who's good with technology running it, you get the idea. I actually helped one of those on-premise solutions create what we called the fake cloud, which is basically hosted servers that we would then download or upload your software to that you could then log into and use. But at the end of the day, it really led me to coming to a company like NetSuite, which I've been here for 6 years now, really just working with the source of what we can do, which is giving people the flexibility to not be chained to their office space or their computer, but rather be able to move around, have that visibility they need, run reports that they need within a couple clicks of a button, and being able to plan accordingly. Especially with things like tariff changes this past year, the past couple years. Now we're seeing a lot of issues with suppliers from overseas and a lot of fears in how that's even affecting our markets in today's economy. How do we answer that and make sure that we have, again, a plan B, plan C moving forward? So I find that technology is really driven smarter buyers or recognizing, hey, I don't know much about technology, but I know I need to use it. So how do I make that happen?
Great, thank you. The evolution of the ERP market has been, fascinating to watch from its beginnings and introduction, and then growing to a point where there were more than 300 providers globally, and then, as typical of markets like that, then kind of coalescing around a half a dozen or so major vendors. And then it just kind of perked along at a kind of steady state, and then the introduction of cloud has really caused a revitalization. As you mentioned, Oracle NetSuite its inauguration was based on the cloud. And I believe ERP markets or enterprise markets in general are growing at about 10% a year, perhaps more. How would you characterize the transition to cloud from small to mid-sized companies? Are there still companies that are intransigent and are committed to remaining on premises, or do they see the kind of benefits that come from having cloud and not having the large IT component to support them, or being concerned with security and some of those other issues? I know I wandered around a little bit there, but please go ahead.
That's okay. I get the gist of the question, which I would say for anyone, technology and embracing it depending on and truly, I don't mean this in any disrespect, but when you've been born, right? We've got a generation of people who are born with basically phones in their hands. And then we've got people who really have seen the transition all the way through. I think I'm in the middle where I remember the days where we didn't have this kind of technology and sitting with dial-up and then seeing how fast it's grown and how it's made my life a lot easier. So I'm a bit more adaptive to embracing technology. But you mix all those different people in our business space today, and that's why some of it moves a little bit slowly or quickly depending on what side of the coin you sit on. And it really just comes to making sure that your fears are answered. Oftentimes people do worry about security, safety, what happens if the servers go down since you don't physically control them. But what a lot of people find as they go through their research is it's actually saving them a ton of money from an IT perspective. And not to say that you still don't need an IT guy, but for those startup and small to mid-sized companies who are going to use a software system like NetSuite, it's pretty self-explanatory, as well as there's a lot of self-help available to you. And if you don't prefer that, we have partners and or working directly with us as a software provider to help guide you through that, whether that's through training, one-on-one hand-holding, you fill in the blank. There's all different ways to appease the different people based on what their comfort level is with technology. But I think, again, with the pushing functions that we have on our Apple phones, on our Androids or Samsungs, right? A lot of it drives customers to feel comfortable and recognize, oh, maybe I can embrace this. I think if you ask 10 people, I would say 8 out of 10 people still can't describe what the cloud is, but they know it just means their information is somewhere. And again, it's an education gap that we just need to bridge over. So we pride ourselves in a lot of that from a marketing standpoint, as well as just our company as a whole. If you have questions about cloud or does that really give you safety or security, please check out our website, check out our YouTube channel. We also have a GrowWire channel where we answer a lot of those questions, and you can see real-time customers of all different sizes explaining why they switched over to the cloud. But I think it's, again, a bit of education and fear that keeps people from necessarily embracing or running towards it completely and wholly.
Good, thank you. Here's an interesting question from one of our listeners, and it is, how does NetSuite deal with a manufacturer with few raw materials but many final products versus a company with many raw materials and few finished goods? Think textiles with yarn versus cars having thousands of parts.
We handle both pretty beautifully. I would say there are some areas where we need to get into what level of tracking you're getting into. If you're getting into remnants, if you're getting into yardage and stuff like that. We have customers of all different types, especially on our manufacturing side, with both scenarios that you're describing. It just gets into the traceability and the different modules we then leverage to give you that visibility. So oftentimes we'll go through what we call a discovery or alignment, to make sure that we understand what your requirements are before we actually then go into a demonstration for you to really show you how it would function out of the box. But again, we have a lot of checks and balances in place. You even have things like your engineering change controls. If you're using drawings and CAD systems, it's super easy for us to integrate that into NetSuite so you can manage those moving parts. If you have very little parts but many different finished goods, again, same difference. It's all inventory management at the end of the day in the system. It's how we consume it and what it's consumed in that the reports will actually give you those trends and analysis. So great question. I don't think either one gives us any difficulties. It's more, what is your business trying to accomplish, and how can we, again, make it efficient and streamline those processes for you?
Thank you. Here's a question from a listener in which is included the word algorithm. So here we go. What are the considerations or variables in an algorithm that is purposed to identify inventory optimization opportunities? For example, how much are maintenance strategies and equipment criticality considered?
So we do have functions out of the box to address that. I believe with our standard modules, it has 4 different algorithms that are pre-canned out of the box. We also recognize, though, that, and you're having a more intelligent conversation with me on that question, if you want more customized algorithms or more choices, that's where we can pull in partner products to actually answer some of that flexibility, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. We also offer analytics out of the box, cubing, and there's one more piece that's slipping my mind right now, but we have several different ways to approach that. And again, if you're not happy with how those functions work, we always have partner products that existing customers are using today with their NetSuite platform to make sure that they can answer that. So it just depends on the complexity of your business. We typically walk you through that and give you the good, the bad, the ugly of which way you're trying to go, and then typically put that back in your hands to figure out and help us decide which way you'd prefer to proceed.
Thanks. One of the biggest topics when cloud was first introduced was the topic of customization of the system and whether that would be possible with systems in the cloud. Perhaps you could talk for a moment about the level of customization allowed or recommended with the Oracle NetSuite solution, and tell us how that works in a cloud environment.
Sure. I can't speak to all other cloud ERP-based systems, but I can definitely talk about NetSuite's. I find that customization can be or used to be a pretty dirty word, especially if you were in more on-premise solutions. It oftentimes required that you needed to have some kind of developer to help you move buttons, add fields, change certain verbiage to what you want. Whereas with NetSuite and our platform, we make it pretty simple for you to drag and drop. There's places out of the box for you to change verbiage, make things appear a certain way if you want to see something in a more graphical view versus a list view. We make it pretty simple because at the end of the day, each person wants the same information, but they might want to view it differently. So a lot of those customizations, I refer to them more as tailorizations within your software, are basic standard functions we offer for you to really make that more comfortable for your organization and your users. When you want to get into more programming or more customizations around how certain workflows will work, again, we have systems and checks and balances in place where you can use our workflow system. If you're getting into more technology where you actually require a developer, the wonderful thing about NetSuite is we are a platform that has the appropriate APIs and connecting points where you can create your standard customizations. Think you might want to write your own module and how it works. I don't typically recommend that just because you then start divvying your attention from your business and you start getting into software development. So most of the times I make sure that people talk to us first about what they're trying to accomplish, because oftentimes we've probably created some of those customizations already or have a partner that's done so. And then if not, then you can apply the 80-20 rule, which is then tailor it to how you actually want it to work versus having to start from scratch. So NetSuite is one of those beautiful platforms that gives you that flexibility depending on the type of technology you're trying to use. If you're a developer and you're trying to get into true writing code,
are you still there,
software,
Michelle?
Yes, can you hear me?
Well, let's wait just one moment to see if Michelle can quickly rejoin us.
Can you still hear me?
Yes. Welcome back.
Okay. Sorry about that. I was like, I thought we were there. Again, what I was saying was NetSuite offers you a beautiful platform, whether you just want to do more visual aspects of it down to actually getting into software development. It's really your call, but at the end of the day, we offer flexibility across the board. So it's just a matter of which way do you want to go, and we always offer training as well as classes available to you out of the box to figure out which route is best for you.
Thanks. Again, one of our listeners is asking about differentiators of inventory management in different industries. And he's asking, what are the differentiators pertaining to inventory management with the process industries as opposed to discrete manufacturing?
When it comes to the difference between process and discrete, it really comes down to timing. It also comes down to, I would say, when you need certain items at what time. Let's say we're making a car, for example. I don't need my engine until probably month 6 of the actual manufacturing versus ordering it at the very beginning, and now we're storing this engine for all these months, and it costs us thousands of dollars to get it there before we could even drop it into the finished good. So I would say it's timing across that. When we're talking about food and beverage, it's down to not only timing but also expiration dates. So you have multiple layers of complexity that come into place depending on what type of manufacturing you're doing. Again, we answer all of those things. It's just a matter of how much controls or checks and balances you need across that. But it can be anywhere from pretty simple, where you don't need, much more than reorder points and things like that, to then truly getting into warehouse management to make sure that we have the space for it, down to not only reorder points but replenishment points, right? Let's say you're dealing with a lot of nuts, screws, and bolts, right? You don't want to have to sit there and have someone count them, but we might support more of a just-in-time method where we need to make sure that if it hits a certain low point, we know to order X amount, whether it's thousands, hundreds, et cetera. The system will automate all of that for you. But again, just depends on how much or how little you need to use of the software. That's what I'm talking about, the scalability.
Great, thank you. We have time for just about one or two more questions. Please send them to us if you have one. But in the meantime, Michelle, let's talk a little bit about implementations. I mean, there was a time not so long ago where the cost of implementations was estimated typically as being twice as much as the software itself. I assume, and in fact know, that things have gotten better since then. But when it comes to SMEs, do they have a choice between a big bang or a staged approach? What are some of the options available for SMEs when it comes to that crucial implementation time?
Sure. I would say yes. There have been definite improvements on the implementation side. We offer both. Not only if you want to do a big bang, but oftentimes we might help you and recognize a big bang is not going to do your business well, especially if we're coming into your busier season. So we might have to staircase approach it, as we call it, and we call it the stairway of success, meaning we need to focus on the key things like your financials, your accounting, your sales orders, your customer base first. Then we'll move into refining it into more the procurement side, warehouse management, e-commerce, et cetera. Because we've worked with over 16,000 customers in our 20-some-odd years of being in business, we know what those best practices are, and rather than taking the approach of taking an order and just giving you what you've asked for, we take more of a consultative approach to say, hey, based on what you're saying and the timing you're looking for, here's the right path that we actually need to go about to make sure that the transition is a lot smoother for you. So we refer to it as our Sweet Success methodology. Really, it's focusing on the success of you as the customer, as well as us delivering you standard solutions that will help you get there without having to customize so much, which is, back in the day, a lot of software providers really made their money off of. But when you're going through a 6-month to a year-long implementation, it's painful for you as the customer to go through that changeover. So again, we've tried to bridge that gap. We have a lot of programs in place. And if you have questions on it, we'd love to get you on the phone with one of our reps to walk you through the Sweet Success methodology and how it'll help you get into the cloud as quick as 0 to 100 days. Obviously, I'll say that's a loose scale depending on the size of your company and what we're trying to talk about. Fair enough?
Very fair. Thanks, Michelle. I feel like we've pushed you to talk quite a bit in the last hour. Hold on, one or two more questions and we'll be at the end. One of our listeners is asking what percentage of users are doing management on mobile versus desktop? What's the story on mobility and ERP at this point?
Gosh, I think that's more of a marketing question for our team, so we can probably get someone to answer that more specifically. I don't know what the percentages are, but because we're a cloud-based system, so it's literally you type in the URL, type it into NetSuite, and you can then see it whether I'm on a computer, on my handheld device. We also have apps for it. People will use their iPads, Androids, et cetera. I would say we have a good mixture, just because, again, it's a URL. We purposely made it that way to make it easy for people, including you can actually publish some of the reports straight as a report that you can access, again, through a website instead of having to log into Core NetSuite. So I would say it's all of the above. I just don't know what the specific numbers are, but I typically work off the desktop because I'm a little bit old school and have like multiple monitors where it looks like I can fly a plane off of my desk. A lot of our customers really do use their mobile devices. Again, it just depends on what their job role and function is, but we also extend that out to the shop floor as well. So it's really a good mix across the board.
A great answer, Michelle. Final question. Do you believe that ERP will remain the single source of truth and increasingly act as a platform decision support in manufacturing enterprises?
I think that's the direction everyone's going at this point. You do truly need to have a central data point or one source of the truth. And then what we try to do is support any flexibility you want. Maybe things that we haven't thought of. We'll either provide you partners or allow you the APIs to develop those programs accordingly. So it's really your choice, but if you're looking at any ERP systems, make sure that they offer you the same things I talked about earlier, which is flexibility, visibility, and agility. And if you are missing any of those components, you're probably not looking at the right software package for you, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. But the basic rule is that you're going to have a central system of the truth. How you then pull that all together is the next important question you need to ask yourself.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for your presentation and commentary today. That's all the questions we have time for. I'd like to thank Michelle again for contributing her expertise, and thank you to our audience for attending today's webcast. We hope it suited your purposes. For more information, please go to the website links noted in the interface. I'd like to thank Oracle NetSuite for supporting today's webcast, and now that we're just about done, we'd like to hear how we did. The exit survey will pop up on your screen as soon as this webcast ends. Please take a moment to complete it as we use this information to improve our webcasts. On behalf of CFE Media, thanks for attending, and we'll see you next time.